conversation in Treaty 1 territory. And at this time, I would like to actually introduce my co-moderator for the rest of the week. He needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway. As soon as he's done reading his notes. He wrote a book of poetry. He's a certified author. He actually has a bestseller that was out about. And he's such an amazing individual. So I'm going to call him up here. Ovik, come up here and say hello to the folks. Let's give a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning. We're trying to get organized to very sensitive. Some of the chiefs are lining up now, and then we're inviting all the leaders. By that I mean the chiefs and the councillors to be part of the grand entry. And the elders too, please walk with us. And the grand entry is a way of introducing what we're going to do together in the next few days. So my name is Ovik Mercury. I'm from a small community called Grand Rapids, or Mississippi, which is along the shores of Lake Winnipeg, and where the Saskatchewan River empties into that lake. That's where I was raised. I'm talking because I'm trying to make sure that everybody gets a chance to line up for the grand entry. And I'll welcome a treaty champion here that just walked in a few minutes ago too, Regina Crowchild, someone that's been carrying our torch for quite a while. I'm glad she's able to make it and be part of our gathering here. And she's also on the agenda, so you'll get to hear her sometimes in the next few days. Now, we asked who was here from Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. But is there anybody here from the territories, the Northwest Territories, because that's all part of Treaty 1 to 11. Anybody from the Northwest Territories? Not yet. But it's early in our gathering, and I'm sure that we'll get representation from all treaty areas from 1 to 11.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise for the opening of our grand entry?
we'll ask Mary and Robert Toyoshi to come up and do the invocation for the day. And after that, we will acknowledge legal staff carriers. Thank you for rising, and we'll acknowledge you from your seat, leadership. Please rise, stay standing for the invocation. Mary and Robert Toyoshi.
Bonjour, good morning, my relatives. My English name is Robert, family name Toyoshi, Toyoshi in our language. My spirit name, Indian name, whatever you want to call it, strong sentiment, Buffalo. I'm not going to offer an opening prayer, and I'm going to explain that. Prayers were offered already this morning with the lifting of those pipes, with the opening of those sacred bundles, and in particular with the starting of that sacred fire that'll go on for the next 4 days. If I were to stand here today to offer a prayer, I'm basically saying the prayers offered this morning don't count for anything. So that's why I'm not offering. But what I am doing is I'm acknowledging those prayers that were offered this morning. That's our way. That's what we need to learn as a people. Because of what has happened to us over the years, we've forgotten our ways. We need to relearn it, and that's one of those teachings. If those prayers are lifted, you don't need to offer another prayer, because the prayers have been offered already. So with that, I say be blessed. Thank you for that opportunity, and I believe my partner has something to share.
So gedauert, so wenn ich meine Schnittkasten gedacht habe, so zu schaffen. Kenninge mit einer Arbeit und mit Geschäft Ascha, wo ich Pita we bagi Geschäft zu bauen, dieses Ascha den Jahr haben wir sich in der Mutterpanier, wo ich wenn kagi mit in Arbeit Jahr, Geschäft mit der Nachmachen, Mama Chegou back to us and at the Sudan, coming to the old. Me and using together in our house, up to this, which was now coming in and getting away. You show when I couldn't away, Mamma, Kevin, no, can you go to the mom? Can you name Kevin was sent the mom to be with you on? I need to get in, as she can the mom. You bet, it didn't cannot, Mamma, you were where some of the marble open, some of the bishop's out there getting one, a great deal, on Ishna, a bit of member, so like an hour. Get to spend on the guardian in the same. Can I get some other Manu to the Sunday, to the Square Way, Kaka to speak out to Jinkin, can't the guardian do the same. Good morning, my dear relatives. My name is Strong Standing Legal Woman. I'm Turtle Spirit. And I'm from the Green Clan. I just want to say that again, what my husband had shared, that we offered our prayers at sunrise this morning, along with Michael and Carla, the bundle carriers. So we were honored to sit with them, to lift our pipes, to offer prayers in a good way, to acknowledge all of creation, all of life. We gave thanks for everything so that we all have a good life and that we have a good gathering here as we gather together here today and for the next 4 days. We ask for strength to remain strong, to remain standing. And with those prayers, we are empowered to do the right thing, to do good things for our people, as we are in very trying times in our communities right now, especially with addictions, substance use is devastating our communities. it's impacting and affecting all of us. Especially as a grandmother, as a mother, I worry. So those are the prayers that I offer every time I lift my pipe, every time I offer a prayer, even just waking up in the morning reading that sentence saying, thank you for giving me another day. So with that, I want to say thank you to all of you and to all the chiefs, leaders, council members, elders, grandmothers, grandfathers, and all the people that have come and listen to the 3-1 to 11 gathering away din may batch ka na
Thank you. And now we'd like to acknowledge our relatives and friends that are carrying the flags, carrying the Eagle Staff, Mr. Don Quinn. The other Eagle Staff, Grand Chief McLean, Treaty 2 Eagle Staff. And Chief Vernon Watchmaker. Let's give a round of hand for three Eagle Staff carriers. Chief Cameron Catchway carrying the Treaty 2 flag staff. Mr. Scott Lake Slade, Treaty 4 flag staff. Mr. Jamie Cady of the Red Earth Cree Nation. Chief Yellowknife of Big Stone Cree Nation. Treaty 8, Chief Leopard, that's what it says. The other three last names, I can't read them, so I apologize. Let's give them all a big round of applause. Sorry, guys. Wonderful, thank you so much. Let's give Ray a big round of applause. He's been doing a lot of heavy lifting for the last month and a half. Taking care of this event for us. And Eugene and Tegan. Wow, it's a pretty magnificent team that we've had here. And now we'd like to call some leadership up for some opening remarks. I'll ask my co-moderator here to take over the mic. Yep.
Okay, again, let's stand up. We'll get started with the presentations. For the opening remarks, we have a visitor, Colonel McLean, also AMC Grand Chief Kyber Wilson, and Grand Chief Jerry Daniels. And according to the agenda, we may have someone from the city, Mayor Jeff Gossett, possibly someone from the Premier's office. And on this list, I have Nandingal Masti, the Minister of Business Services. So we'll begin with the leader, the Grand Chief Treaty 2, the host community, the host organization, host treaty area for this gathering. And I welcome Colonel McLean, Chief Colonel McLean. Please give him a warm welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to say thanks to our knowledge teachers, Robert, Mike, Asher, and Mary, for the opening prayers, and also for the little invitation that was set. I also want to acknowledge former leadership, National Grand Chief Ovid Mercury, former AMC Grand Chief Dennis Whiteberg, former Dennis, when I hear him speak, he also brings motivation to us as leaders because he knows the knowledge and the treaties very well. And I also want to welcome everybody to Brandon Treaty 2 territory. It's good to see a lot of leaders from across Canada. Sometimes these things are called and we don't have opportunity to get away because of our jobs that we do. I also want to say thanks to my wife for supporting me 100%. Sometimes it's hard to get away and it's hard to leave home because I've been doing this for 12 years. I've been chief of my nation and some days it gets long. Sometimes you do things outside the box. Right now I'm acting regional chief for AFN for Manitoba. So that's been pretty tight up. I want to Grand Chief Kyra Wilson and also Grand Chief SEO Grand Chief Jerry Daniels for the work that they do with our nation. The gathering is something we took on last year when it was hosted in Calgary. I want to say big warm thanks to Rod Mizziavic and the Treaty 2 staff for all of their work that they've done to promote this. The mayor of Brandon, we came to meet him and talk about what the gathering was going to do for the economy of Brandon. And they always think when there's a hockey tournament, everything goes out, price goes up, and it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't be treated any different than anybody else with the same citizens of this world, of Canada. So I just want everybody to know that. I really wanted to say thank you to Ron, what's the young man's name, hockey player there, Ray's done a wonderful job of organizing things and gets pretty hectic for our staff, for the Treaty 2 staff, and they worry about whether there's going to be a person in the room. I know for my community, I have my bus last week with my elders to show the appreciation so that they can learn from the leadership. I know other communities have people coming so that they're acknowledged here. I want to acknowledge Mary Ashley. She always gives me some words of guidance on the side because she doesn't like her husband to know that she's talking to him. With that, I'll say be blessed. Thanks everybody for coming. Enjoy your week. Be one. Thank you.
Now we'd like to ask AMC Grand Chief Miss Kyra Wilson. Let's give her a big round of applause as she makes her way up here with her amazing speech and words of wisdom that she's going to leave forever after doing it.
There's a lot of pressure. The best speech ever. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy and so honored to be here this morning. I see familiar faces, new faces, and it's always nice when we come together and share this space and knowledge and teachings of our people across Turtle Island. And so, of course, I want to say good morning to all of our elders, knowledge keepers, all the chiefs that are in the room, counselors, and all the youth, and all of the guests that are here. We are here for the Treaty 111 gathering, and I know there's going to be so many great discussions this week. And of course, my name is Kyra Wilson, Grand Chief, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. And we represent 63 First Nations here in Manitoba. I'm from Long Plain First Nation, as well as Sandy Bay First Nation. I see our Long Plain elders, knowledge keepers. Where are you? Right over there. I see some over there. Some over here. I just want to say good morning to each and every one of you. And of course, to one of my many aunties, Lisa, who's also from Long Plain. And then I have the honor of working with Obed. He always says that I'm his boss, but really, he's my boss. And also my other boss here, Dennis Whitebird. I get to work with Obed and Dennis, and they're just a wealth of knowledge, and they share so much with me every single day. So I just want to acknowledge our past and former leadership and the wisdom that you share with everyone. But of course, our chiefs here in Manitoba, represents us at so many tables, and he's always so busy, and he does a lot of work for our nations here in Manitoba. So I want to acknowledge Chief McLean and all of Treaty 2 for hosting this gathering. You know, it takes a lot of work, and so thank you to all the staff and the organizers for doing this as well. And I know we have a number of special guests that are going to be here. I do believe National Chief is supposed to be here. Of course, Grand Chief Jerry Daniels, and then we also have another Grand Chief from Treaty 8, Trevor Mercury. Mayor Jeff Fawcett, I believe, is supposed to be here, as well as representatives from the province and the Fed. So I believe the Premier's office, as well as Minister Manuel Massey from MIS. So I just want to say welcome to everyone, and of course, you know, today we deal with so much. Historically, we've dealt with so much. You know, today's theme, or this week's theme, is honoring our past, strengthening our sovereignty. And so, of course, across the country right now, governments are making major decisions about trade, energy, infrastructure, critical minerals, economic corridors, and essentially our relationship with not only the United States, but across the country, or not across the country, across the world. And so these decisions involve our lands, they involve our resources, and involve our future. Yeah, all too often our people are treated as though we should be grateful simply to be consulted. And the very least, a lot of the times we are not consulted. What we see is decisions are being made without our people, without our leadership, at these tables where decisions are being made. So we aren't stakeholders, and we know that. And I believe that we've made that very clear to Canada, to the provinces, that we are treaty partners. And so for generations, government has hidden behind light words like consultation, reconciliation, engagement, frameworks, agreements. But we know the difference between being consulted and actually exercising our jurisdiction. So it is systemic. That is something that we've dealt with for as long as we know. We've been dealing with these systems that have been imposed on our people. And so our rights, we know, come from Creator. Section 35 of Canada's Constitution did not create our rights. Our rights existed long before Canada. They come from Creator, they come from our laws, they come from our nations, from our relationships with the lands and the waters. So our ancestors did not make treaty with the provinces. They made treaty with the Crown. And so that relationship does not disappear when governments change, when provincial boundaries are drawn, or when political landscapes shift. And so when I think about all the knowledge that is in this room here today, but also all of our knowledge keepers across our island, and all the knowledge that each and every one of you carry about our treaties, it's so important that we come together to bring forward this message to not only the provinces and to Canada, is that we are going to be at the table. That is our table. And when it comes to our lands and our waters, our resources, we are going to do whatever we can to protect our nations, our people. And when it comes to all of our leadership coming together, that is what I would love to see across this country. All of our nations, all of our leadership coming together, because that is something that Canada does not want to see. That is something that the provinces don't want to see. They don't want to see our people come together, because we are always stronger when we come together. When we come together to show the strength of our people, that we were the first peoples here in this country. Before this country was even created, we were the first peoples on Turtle Island. And so when we're talking about lands, resources, major projects, anything that has to do with our territories, we are the ones that make those decisions. And so that is why I'm so happy to be here this week to talk about what is the message that we're going to share with Canada. That we are united, that we are together, and no decisions are going to be made without our people. And whatever decision we make as First Nations people, that is what Canada is going to have to listen to. That is what the provinces are going to have to listen to. And so I know we are there, but we have to come together collectively to share that strong message that we are united. So I want to say miigwech and have a beautiful week, and I look forward to saying hello to everyone. Thank you.
That was a speech. I'm so proud of her, not because she's our grandchief, but mostly because she's my young relative. So let's give her another big round of applause for all proud of our relatives when they do this amazing in leadership. Well, I get a chance also want to acknowledge my cousins. Dan Beach is there, Yoza, the man himself. Let's give a big round of applause. Woo! Maybe a blow on his guitar, and I know later on. Okay, because depends. You got it on a good line up? You're good? Good? Okay. That's right, the next time. And speaking of his relatives, let's call on Grand Chief Jerry Daniels from the Southern Chiefs Organization up to the podium. Let's give him a round of applause. Almost didn't recognize him with his glasses on. But here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Grand Chief of SCO, Jerry Daniels.
Want to thank our Creator for another day, another beautiful day. Want to thank our elders who are here, the drum, flag carriers, all of you who helped bring us in this morning, our ceremonial people, those who helped bless this meeting, bring clarity to the work that we must do, the conversations that need to happen, to build understanding throughout Treaty 111 nations. It's important, very important work, so I acknowledge Grand Chief Carl Wilson. Best looking Grand Chief 2026. Woo! Former 2025. Just kidding. Now, want to also acknowledge Grand Chief McLean and their leadership here, Chief Catchway, our board members, Chief Bird. We got a few SCO chiefs here. I think seen a few others. My uncle was here. I think he's somewhere here. Marvin Daniels, counselor from Long Plains. Also our elders from Long Plains. Do we see the elders from Long Plains that are here? I see you over there. Okay, just want to acknowledge my family from back home. You know, many of them played a role. Oh yeah, and then my dad's here. My dad is here. Oh, over there, yeah. Thank you for coming. I know they brought a little charter out, so it's good to have the relatives come and join us for this. I hope there's a lot of good relationships built. You know, we come to these things and speakers come up here and they sort of rehash history. We talk about the colonial relationship and colonization, discrimination, and the lived experiences that are translating into great loss of hope in many of our citizens, loss of many of our young people, especially to addictions. Ryan here who's been helping Grand Chief Wilson. Me and him went to school together. And many of the people in our classroom in grade 6, a lot of them are gone. And it's addictions that's creating that. Many of my best friends as a child have lost their lives. So those are things that I think about in this world. And so the smudging, drinking water, monitoring your diabetes, probably got a lot of diabetes here. We've been really working on trying to build education around that. And we're fighting it as individuals, and we're fighting it as a collective. So just want to encourage you to continue that. My grandfather, he down to he smudged every 6 days in the morning and at night. He didn't lecture me, he just did it. And my grandma, at Christmas time, she tried to buy everybody presents, even though there were so many of us. just a few of us, but when it was over, they always made sure that everybody got something. I just want to say that our people are warrior people. You know, that's the spirit of our people. That's why we never flew under one banner. There wasn't one flag in the air. We acknowledge ourselves as people of creation, as people who are lowered down from the stars onto the planet. And we had a great respect for one another, great respect for Dishimani, for the land, you know, but we came together because we saw the necessity of our collective action. And it was great leaders who were able to bring us together. Great leaders like Pontiac, who gathered up the three fires, the Odawa, the Anishinaabe, and we continued to fight to maintain our position as sovereign people. And what came from that was the Royal Proclamation, and many of us are aware of it. From that Royal Proclamation came the Treaty of Niagara. The Treaty of Niagara set the terms for treaty. It said to all those who settle these lands that they must negotiate with First Nations if they wish to be in our territories. It was not because they felt bad for us. It was not because we were their relatives. It was because we enforced our sovereignty. And we came together as collective nations to defend our children and our families. That is what treaty was about. It comes from warrior spirit, the ones who fought, who were willing to die. And so I wanted to just acknowledge them. And it's always an honor to speak of Pontiac because he's, in my mind, one of our greatest leaders. And you know, there are times in my life where I always think, you know, what if we should have did this, we should have did that? You know, and then years later, we saw the encroachment into our territories. You know, you had the American breakup from the British crown, nations divided, and then Tecumseh became a real player, a great leader who united our nations once again in similar fashion and fought again for a sovereign nation. It was unfortunate that that great leader at the time had passed away, because during the negotiations that came through after the War of 1812 did not create an independent nation. And Canada instead, and America, United States, worked to domesticate us. Their great minds around their tables saw the future as one in which they could manage our nations. And rather, they took a strategy of division because they saw it work. They saw it work in Scotland, in Ireland, and throughout the Mediterranean, Northern Africa, all around the world, in India. They had a company in India called the East Indian Company, very similar to the Hudson Bay Company, model of the same thinking. That is what we're dealing with, the descendants of those soft boxes. And so when we come to treaty, and we talk about what it is we're facing, that's what we're facing. And I applaud chiefs in the room for their sophistication and their sharpening of their negotiations in dealing with government, in the province, the federal government, being able to get land claims, transfer. Gamblers First Nation, many of you probably drove by Gamblers First Nation, do not have a TLE, but were able to create an additions to reserve process in a very short period of time. And if you were to look at their agreement, it is one of the best urban reserve agreements in the country. If you're really to analyze it and spend time looking at it, one of the best, if not the best agreement. Maybe Treaty 1 is, I'm not sure. I would say, you know, we gotta assess that. But great work done by great leaders. Our challenge as nations is that we're falling behind. We're falling behind in that now. So many people addicted. The quality of life is falling behind. But we're getting lots of wins. And so I want to say that just to encourage. But there's a few different things that I just want to identify. I know that when we come to treaty, we talk about jurisdiction, we talk about some of the relationships, and how are we gaining progress across the country. But there is a First Ministers meeting that is occurring in late October. We need to be talking about how collectively the Treaties 1 to 11 nations. What is our message to the Prime Minister? What is our message to Canada? How do we resolve the idea of our collective action, collective message for Canada? And so that's what's important, I think, for what we're doing. And so I want to just say that we need to keep that in our minds when we're speaking. When we talk of treaty, when we talk of challenges, the evolution of the relationship between Canada and ourselves. So that we can start to really think about what needs to happen. What do we need to say? What is our goal? Best scenario in our relationships with Canada. What is the best case scenario that we can achieve? It's Treaties 1 to 11. It's nations across Canada. What is the best thing we can achieve? We have great people in this room who can explain that. Explain that to us. I think that's a good way to think about it. Because if we don't have a goal, if we don't have a target in our collective messaging, our collective lobbying efforts, there's a lot of us. Tribal councils, different political organizations, local communities, treaty, we have lots. We have firms, we have lawyers, we have accountants, we have consultants. All of us are centered around a message, a strategy. So we have to identify those things so that we can come with something or achieve something that we think can come out of it. So I just wanted to say that. The other things that we're talking about are obviously water legislation. How is that going to impact? How do you want to approach that? I hope we're speaking about that. Health. We've seen health authorities throughout the country. We're working on it, trying to improve. I think phlebotomy's been sort of our biggest example of that. Education, we have multiple endowments that we're creating, strengthening our people, preparing them for industry, the changing economy. Those are things that we're working on. And so I don't want to go on. I know there are lots of speakers. I just want to thank everybody for coming here. I want to acknowledge Chief Blue Sky. I know he's not here, but I know he's going to be speaking, and also Chief Niffanak, who will be here later. I'm going to digress. My computer's not turning on. But I wanted to just share just a few things that I think about. As Grand Chief, I think about what we must do. Our organization has been strengthened over the years, and we have more and more young people sitting at our table, and it's a true honor to have them. I want to acknowledge Youth Chief Billy Bird, who's just sitting over there with Chief Bird. Thank you for being here, and thanks again for the honor of sharing a few words this morning with you. And I hope we talk more over the next few days. See you at church.
I am so proud of Grand Chief Daniels. We were pretty much raised in the same backyard in Long Plain at my grandparents, Donald and Isabel Daniels. And so I want to say thank you to him, and he's always here for the community when needed, when asked. He's ready to help out at any time. So let's give him another big round of applause. My cousin Jerry. Super deadly, that guy. It's really fun to have relatives that are in leadership positions, especially when you have the mics that you can get back, right? For anything they might have done. And nah, too soon? And like Jerry, I just want to give a quick shout out to all of our relatives that are visiting from different treaty territories. And so thank you all of you for being here. It's such an amazing day. love to eat different types of cuisine. For example, I would take him here if, he's coming in for a meeting or helping people in Winnipeg. I would take him to this restaurant or to that restaurant, just to try out different cuisines, like just to try it out. And this one time I went to Itchy Band, that place where you go underground and they make food in front of you. So it was that Itchy Band raised by RBC Convention Center. And we're sitting there, I think I invited a couple of my friends, and we're sitting there with Grandpa, and all of a sudden, Ovid and his wife walked in. And so of course we're compelled to come over and say hello. And then my grandpa almost offered him tobacco, but he asked a really important question to Ovid. He said, how do you keep your skin looking so great? Everybody wants to know what your skin secret is. And he had one thing he said, I suppose I stay away from joy women. That's what he said. What a guy. Anyway, here he is.
You've got me to trouble. I wanted to give you a little background on the history of the 1-11 movement. And then we're going to have Eric Matusas, who's the current spokesperson for the movement, to come up, and he will also tell the second part of the story. Please, Eric, you'll have to come around this way. Oh, Gamatsa, okay. He said he wants me to start. So we have been meeting for many years now, trying to figure out how we can breathe life to our treaties. And it's not just something that we think about, it's something that is necessary to create action, to get some results from our thinking. So Treaty 1-11 was started by the chiefs. There was a gathering of all the chiefs of Treaty 1-11. I think it was Calgary, or was it Edmonton? I forget. But he forgets too, so one of those cities. I think you say maybe this time. It was 1992 now. Edmonton. Okay, so he's going way back into ancient history. I'm talking about some modern time, okay, but you'll have a chance to give you his history knowledge about treaty struggles we were having. So the thing you have to think about is this. None of the treaties have been honored by this country. So at some point in time, we have to say to each other, we're not only tired of waiting for this country to honor the treaties, but we have to say, we have to hold the British Crown accountable. So we made a treaty, not with any province, as the Grand Chief said, and not with John A. Macdonald, who was trying to create a country in 1867. We made a treaty with the British Crown in the name of Queen Victoria. So that is who we have to hold accountable for the fact that the treaties have not been respected by this country. And in the meantime, you can see how rich this country has become. When we look around at our communities, without exception, there is no First Nations community that shares the kind of wealth this country has generated from our natural resources. Not a single First Nation can claim to be wealthy. That's why we started the movement, Treaty 111, so that we could not just inform our people what their treaty rights are, but what their responsibilities are to uphold those treaty rights. Madam was weighed on this, but it was not easy, because we're dealing with the power of the country, the suppressive power of the country. And how did they exercise spreading fear amongst our people who wanted to go fishing or trapping or hunting? Well, they used laws that they made, and they enforced those rules with police officers and conservation officers, and across this land. And amid violence, or people are having a difficult time, they are suffering. That's why we started Treaty 111. And the chiefs did that. I was a chief at that time. And the Grand Chief of ANC was Dennis Whitebird. He was the Grand Chief at that time. So they selected an interim spokesperson from one of the communities. I think it was Lieutenant. And then they decided to convene another meeting a year after that. And that meeting took place on the grounds in Lower Fort Garry, where Treaty 1 was signed by the ancestors of that treaty. And that is when I was selected to be the spokesperson for Treaty 111. And I did that for a while, a few years. And then eventually, that was transferred to Eric Tutus. He is now the current spokesperson for Treaties 111. But our idea was to bring our people together as we're doing here. But I think we have arrived at the time now where the leaders, the chiefs themselves, have to convene another national meeting of Treaty 111. We but, like immediately, not tomorrow. I'm no right now. Except what they did, that's what we have to do. The leaders began the movement, and the movement has come to a certain stage now of creating awareness of our rights. Because what we did was we went from one treaty area to every treaty area. I think we've not been to Treaty 9. Otherwise, we've been to all the other treaty areas and had gatherings like this. But sometimes we have to act. We have to stop talking. It's not staying, we're talking too much. While we're talking, the government is doing what the government does, exploiting our lands and our resources for their economic benefit as a country. And for us, we're just outside looking in and waiting for them to come to the realization that the treaty is a sacred understanding between ourselves and the Crown. So my proposal is to go to London. We did that before. I wasn't part of it because I was young then. Well, what was it? But it had to do with the opposition our leaders had to what is called recreation of the Canadian Constitution. It was a time of Pierre Trudeau. And that fight was led by the Indian Brotherhoods, like the Mandan Indian Brotherhood, the the Indian Association of Alberta, and they organized to get their voice heard not just in Canada, but they went all the way to England to voice their opposition to patriation. But why did they say no patriation of the Constitution? They did that because they did not believe and they did not trust Canada with on the treaties. And they saw that idea of patriation as a way in which we would get extinguished from exercising our inherent authority and powers as people. That's why they did that. People like Harold Carter and many other leaders of that time. But they also launched a legal action in the House of Lords. They did political work, they did public relations work, and they did legal work when they went there. That's what I'm proposing to do. We're not just going to go there and look nice or hairdressers. We're going to go there with an action plan that will make the population of that country realize that they have a responsibility to uphold our treaties. But something happened in the House of Lords, and the decision was made by Lord Denning. I met this old man when I was in law school, but he made a very important decision that's in favor of the country, not in our favor. He said in his judgment, I have no reason to believe Canada will not honor the treaties. Now that's 1982. Now, if he was alive now, I would remind him, here's the reasons why Canada can't be trusted. But he's gone. But he also said something else which is favorable to a legal fiction that they created here in this country. That the crown is divisible. That the crown for Britain or England is not the crown for Canada. That the crown is divisible. So what does that mean for us in practical terms? It means that Lord Denning made a decision for his people in London to transfer that responsibility of honoring the treaty to Canada. That's what they did. That's what he decided. But he also said something that could be beneficial to us. However, it's not been seen in any of the laws passed by Parliament or the provinces. What he said was that, as a statement, that no Parliament can alter the treaty. We can use that as leverage. But at the same time, we don't buy into this idea that the crown is divisible. The crown is the crown. And the treaty was made with Queen Victoria. And whether that responsibility was transferred in their minds to Canada, in our minds, there was no transfer of responsibility for honoring the treaty. So we have to hold both countries accountable. But we waited long enough, I think, for Canada. Now, I tried this once. I'll end this comment, and I'll ask my friend here to carry on with the conversation. When I was National Chief, I did go to London. I wanted to meet with Queen Elizabeth. So, we can talk about what can be done about the treaties. I didn't get the audience with Queen Victoria, but I had Willie Littlechild talk with me and a couple of other chiefs. And since we couldn't meet the Queen, we decided we'd have a press conference. where pipe ceremony was done outside of Buckingham Palace, in front of the statue of Queen Victoria. That's where we had our first Christmas. And so we used that venue, that location, to try to impress upon the British people that the treaties are not only sacred, but they have an obligation as a people to honor those treaties because they were done in the name of their crown, in particular Queen Victoria. They gave us this Diane, by this tribe. One of my own, but there's nothing to show for it. So when I got back to Canada, I had a visit from a member of Parliament from the Bloc Party, which is a party dedicated to the sovereignty of Quebec. And he said to me, while you were gone in England, I asked a question of the minister at that time, was Ron Irwin. And he asked Ron Irwin, why did the National Chief go to London? And you know what Ron, what the minister Ron said? He said, I don't know why the National Chief went to London to speak to a statue. So we don't want to do that again, right? We want to see the real people. We want to see the Prime Minister, the members of Parliament. We want to make representations to the House of Lords and so on. But also while we're there, we want to make sure we touch base with an organization called the Commonwealth of Nations. And what is that organization? These are all the people that decolonized in Great Britain, like Africa, all those nations around British rule, like India and the Caribbean islands. We want to associate with those people that found their freedom by getting organized to fight for their freedom. If simply do the Pakistan, that's what we have to do ourselves. We're not talking about breaking up anybody. We're talking about rising up our people by using the treaties that our ancestors made to deal with the social problems that we talk about today. Because that is the only avenue we have right now, is Treaty 111. So we have to get serious about how we organize now. It's not enough to meet now. We have to create a political body, an organization for Treaty 111. Because only the ancestors can transfer that responsibility to the current leadership. And that is what we have. The chiefs, the councillors, the elders of all those communities, the opposite, they have to sit together and make a pathway on how we're going to make sure that the country not only realizes that we mean business, but they have to share their wealth with us. To share the wealth with us, so that we can build our own schools, deal with our own infrastructure, build our own housing, without having to appeal to some bureaucrat or some treasury board in a foreign government. This is what I'm talking about. That kind of freedom is where we have to go. It's too long. It's too long now for waiting. Aren't you tired of waiting? What's that? What happened to our spirit, our warrior spirit? Like Grand Chief talked about. What happened to it? does fail. It's still here, it's just lying latent. It's latent because we're waiting. We're waiting. Eliminate them and we think. What? Tomorrow. No, we can't engage ourselves that way. We have allowed the conditioning that we have received for 150 years to be the way we operate with the country. And we have to decondition ourselves from that kind of slavery that we have been conditioned to accept. So the final thing that the Member of Parliament said about Ron Irwin saying, I don't know why the National Chief went to London to speak to the statue. What he said was this: I guess he had a better time of being heard there. A better chance of being heard there. Now that's pretty perceptive, isn't it? That even the statue would hear me, but the Parliament of Canada and the Government of Canada would not. Well, we're going to go beyond that now. How many of you are willing to raise money just for your own self to go to London? Raise your hand. And one of the things that we can do, by the way, is we'll take the map of Robert's Land. And what is Robert's Land? Robert's Land is what was stolen from us by King Charles II in 1670. This king in England marked out the territory and claimed it as his own. One man, giving it to one of his relatives, and then creating a country, a government, or a corporation called the S&T Company to operate in that territory called Robert's Land. And did you know that in 1867, a handful of white men decided to create a country called Canada in Charlottetown? Maybe less than 30 of them. Well, how many of us are here? There's more of us here than they had in numbers in Charlottetown. We can create a government if we want. We can create a country if we want. Just as they did. And when Canada wanted to expand after creating itself in 1867, what did they do? What did John A. Macdonald and all these politicians do? They lobbied Parliament, the Parliament of Britain, to do two things. For them to buy the land from the Hudson Bay Company. Canada bought the land, Robert's Land, from the Hudson Bay Company. And then the British Parliament passed a law transferring that land to Canada in 1869, 2 years after the Federation. And they did not even come to see us until 1871. 2 years later, they came to us. They gave them Woodbridge. They stole that land. Now this has to be out of talk now. Because that's what happened. That is the reality. That the land was stolen in 1670, transferred to Prince Rupert, called Prince Rupert's Land, bought by Canada through the Hudson Bay Company, and then transferred by the British Parliament to Canada, 2 years after the Confederation. That is stolen land that was taken by Canada before they came to see us. They gave him Woodbridge. And then in 1930, what happened in 1930? in our land. Our land. What happened in 1930? The Natural Resources Transfer Agreement Act, that stolen land was transferred to Manitoba, to Saskatchewan and Alberta. That is how we have to view our history. Ikaw mina, nasa sinisig na wapak naman, ipamagin na sa tingnan, but how can we look at what we call treaties? What do they mean for us? We can't look to Section 35 to say our rights are recognized, and we don't know what was recognized. And we cannot go to the courts to say to the courts, define our rights for us. Those are not our courts. Those are not our courts. They're not going to rule in favor of our interpretation of the treaty. But we better get busy though. To understand what the treaty means for each of us. For each individual sitting here. For each individual sitting at home. And for each nation who has a treaty. So the treaty means more than just hunting, fishing, and traveling. It means far more than that. The treaty is about our nationhood as a people, about our sovereignty, about our jurisdiction, about our authority on our lands and resources, and about our future. Our authority about the future. Anyway, when you get near the wheel, but I tend to do that. So that's nothing unusual. But I'm going to go back to my friend here, because he's been carrying a responsibility since I left too, for keeping this movement going. And I think he agrees with me that we need to organize. We need to create a political body. And we need to be, we understand, as Chief Fire Wilson, Joint Chief, that I said, side by side, tall and strong. And not allow the government to divide us with sunyas, with money. Because they will come. If they see that we're gaining political power, and if our language is changing to words like autonomy to freedom, words like self-love to sovereignty, when they see that language becoming stronger, they will come to us. But they will come not to honor the treaty. They will come to see how divided we are. And they will use that division to break up our movement, our political body. So when you get home, if you're not a chief right now, you have to work on your leadership. And you have to tell them, we have to have a gathering very soon, before major projects are announced, on what we're going to do as a people, from Treaty 1 to 11, on our lands and our territories. And now we have to stand firm to make sure that the treaties our ancestors made will be finally recognized and honored by this country, if not by this country, then by Great Britain.
Thank you, thank you. What a wonderful introduction of our movement, Treaties 1 to 11. First of all, please stand up and announce Capisimo this morning. I'm grateful and praise the ceremony that took place. And praising God, first and foremost, the treaty making was with God. and there was God involved, and the Holy Spirit. And although we've been indoctrinated, let me talk about that a little bit later. Treaties 1 to 11, ladies and gentlemen, is a movement of tribal people from each treaty area. Almost now, every treaty area has an office. And this took some time. Back in the day, when the process was introduced, when the old people saw a different era coming, that was going to be the beginning of hard times. And it was going to have impact on us if we didn't make any kind of effort to combat or mitigate this change that's coming. And they weren't educated, they didn't go to school. And it was the ancient way that still exists today amongst our communities and territories. In our language, we say it, a spirit came to tell them. A spirit came to say, standing beside you, every time you looked almost human, but couldn't see the face, but was talking. And this has our way since this North American continent was created for red people. And then once we got accustomed to being good people, God blessed us with another way. And that is to have this ongoing guidance. And back in the day, back in 1985, when the government was getting aggressive in imposing guidelines and legislation on us, and that's when these old people saw this. Not the way we don't. But all this time, I saw this myself, ladies and gentlemen. I experienced this myself, and I saw it firsthand. The transition that took place in 1982, I was on council, a very young man, on discipline. When I got great learning, great educators. One day we were called back then, it was all the reserves still functioned under the auspices of what we call a treaty council, the treaty agency office. And in Treaty 6 territory, we have Fort Carlton, Fort Battleford, Fort Edmonton, Muscatine, seven offices that were and they functioned that way. In our territory, and in our area in Battleford, we were the Battle River Treaty Agency, Treaty Council. And then the decision that was made, it superseded government policy. It continued making under the Indian Act, there was always a covert plan, and something that we must face with, come face to face with. The covert plan was to get rid of Indians, that there would be no Indian affairs office in the future, no Indian problem. but they wanted the land. And that's what we saw elders. They saw that Mr. is the Lord working on wants the land. And this is what they wanted to do. And then that's what we were told again, was affirmed again. They want to do this, control the land. So that's when this treaty movement started. It was in 1983. That's when corporation being incorporated was introduced. That's when tribal councils were born. That's when the regional councils, the regional organizations in our area anyway, FSI was created by elders, the old people, the pipe carriers, and the leaders followed the advice. So it's the way you remain strong. FSI that day was agency-based, inherent-based movement. And the government didn't like this. They wanted to continue with their corporate plan, control all of us. So they introduced the corporate plan. One day we were called to Belfry. Our treaty agency office is still standing, by the way. The old post office in Belfry now. We were called over there. And then these agents came along and said, this is the future of the government with Indians. And here's how it's going to be done. They introduced and defined incorporated what being a corporation meant. And in Canada, he says, in order for you to qualify to get funding, here's a process that you must go through. So, at the end of the day, when we're asked if you agree, some agreed to it. Some didn't. Some just totally rejected it. Let's improve this relationship that we have. No. The second day, man, the flip chart was wrong. I don't know the same experience in your area. I don't know what's like that members. Anyway, each agency went through this process. Maybe your parents told you about it, your grandma told you about it. But they had a list of these programs and services. Besides, there was the funding, how much money you're going to be entitled to. Well, we've never seen that kind of money. Nobody's ever dreamed of having administrative control of that kind of money. But anyways, at the end of the day, the majority voted in favor to have a corporate office to control more than to control the funding for the reserves. After that, FSI incorporated from inherent base to corporate base. National organization from NIB to AFN, corporate base, functioning beneath Canada. So this didn't work, this is separate for old people. So when legislation again, the Indian Act was amended again to take more control, and that's when this treaty movement took place. It was a meeting in Edmonton, Alberta, at the good old Edmonton Inn. And that's where the treaty office concept was introduced. But then again, later on, as being stepping back and reaffirming and making it inherent based, developing a mechanism, negotiating, mitigating a position as Treaties wanted it, again, in order to get this funding going forward, so every office, Treaty 6 remained. It didn't go with that. We remained independent. And then we began there was very little government funding, core funding they called it. So they wanted help. So one day my phone rang. He says, Eric, can you come and help? We need your help. This is what we want. So this is how I got involved in this. I didn't ask for what I was asking. We want to do these things. So when you want your elders and your leaders input into this. So the first thing we did, there was a national meeting, and then in 1990, and then at that national meeting, the Treaty 6 came there and did some PR work for Treaty 6 gathering. And that Treaty 6 gathering was in Cold Lake. Where's the good tree from here? Yeah. He says he was 19 years old in 1992. And there he is, big chief today. Chief Jackal, let's give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. The leadership gathered there. The elders gathered there. Again, these missionaries gave stories of the future was going to look like. And what the government was trying to attempt to do was domesticate our cultures, like my good friend here introduced the talk earlier. Here's what we have to do. We had some good legal advice. We had some good professional advice. Pro bono. We asked. We got answers. We put it ran it before the elders. So what an affirmation instrument was developed, a declaration that Treaty 6 would continue the relationship with the Crown of Great Britain, would develop, have affirmed bilateral relations with the Crown of Great Britain, would develop a mechanism to continue Crown relations with the Crown in Canada, political, diplomatic, administrative relations, the Crown in Canada and the provinces. And this was tabled at a meeting like this of 55 leaders of Treaty 6 that attended. Some of them were not there. But 48 chiefs signed that declaration. And we started from there. And then we got a mandate from the chiefs to open a sovereign office, Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations. A sovereign office. From there, we got involved in the United Nations discussions, the beginning of Montreal, the original document of Montreal, which is perfect for us, that affirmed our relationship with the land, that we had what we call legal people introduce the word to us. And many of us have to go back to our rooms and dig up our dictionary and look up these terms. He says, Nancy, I was in Musi, and I came the word God blessed us originally. When the first speaker ran chief stars, they gave Bagati Musi. They gave Bagati Musi. We gave from the stars a code of of people who came from there. I believe he now made it and this is Nabe from the stars. But we were much further. Nah. I'm Mark Nakoa. And anyway, we were granted North America. Along with that, land base. Itamaskamik, below here, below the land, below the surface. Our lawyer says it is called a allodial title. Allodial title. Everybody that comes from here, from another country, they don't have that. He says everything and anything will be done for you to walk away from that notion, from that reality. And this is where we got more serious. But then again, we got disrupted with legislation, got disrupted with changes, amendments, offers, government offers. But we kept it going. We kept the office going. And then this movement here. And the beginning was a call again. A national meeting happened. Called for a Treaties 1 to 11 gathering in Edmonton. And that's when it was recommended that the representative of the Queen Elizabeth, at the time was a late Rada Tishin. And we're family, had personal. My late dad always had international legal advice and had these people, lawyers, and one of them was the Natishan Law Group, and the other one was Jim Shumyacher, provided him information and advice. So we contacted the Governor General, and he says, of course I'll come. So he came there, 1992, to try and create a movement, a sovereign movement, national movement. Why a national movement? Because Treaties 1 to 11 covers 58% of Canada, ladies and gentlemen, our land. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. We have that much land in Canada. Allodial title. First right to every natural resource that can be identified. And this is what Canada wants. Still to this day wants it. And there's more changes to the legislation. COVID changes again. And anyways, and that's when the next following meetings, now at Sultana, I hosted a meeting. I stand to be corrected here. But anyway, that's when Sanford Big Plume was chief, and former chief. That's when he was selected to be the spokesperson. Some things happened, he couldn't continue, and then that's when he was called up to be the national chief. And then again, you're too busy with his job, he couldn't continue. Then the next meeting was in here. And where are the meeting rooms here again? Are they over here somewhere? Anyways, so there was no spokesperson. He had given notice that he couldn't continue, so that decision had to be made here. Treaty 6 delegation were one of the corners over here. Chief Clear Sky comes out of the chief's meeting and he says, "Hey Eric, come with me. Chiefs want to see you." I was thinking, did I do something wrong? I say something that isn't correct? And he said, he used that cowboy talk on me, and he said, you know what? He says, I'm going selecting you to be the next spokesperson. And then he says, I'm pushing for it. And the chiefs agreed, said they would just want you to affirm. So I was selected to be the spokesperson. Next morning, it was recommended that I get affirmed by law. By law. Our law. And our law is represented by the pipe. Tribal rule of law is represented by the pipe. I was affirmed as an interim spokesperson by law. So to be tribal legal, to be able to speak and to be able to attend meetings and the what was that white-haired guy? Elder Cushane, he was very good orator, and he spoke to us. And he told us what the future was going to look like, because he saw it, he was shown. You have to be meticulous of what you do from here on. You have to be very careful what you do from here on. And we took the advice of these elders. So we got all involved, elevated everything to the United Nations development, and it affected Canada. And then Canada came up with another instrument called Truth and Reconciliation. Truth and Reconciliation. Truth. Tapwe win. You all have it in your own language. Tapwe win. Tapwe, tapwe. Just as clear as we see one another here, tapwe, we are here, tapwe. Reconciliation. Minos tawin. Kamino naman kiway. Reconcile. To come up with a difference. Reconcile to come up with a difference. And some things, to them, that we had problems with all along is something that we have to do ourselves, is reconcile with ourselves as tribal people. Reconcile with God. And then have the strength and the spirit to admit that every mechanism that has been deployed was for you to forget the original way of worship. Both worship ways are good, we pray to the same God. But one shouldn't say that anything that derives from the holy rituals, tribal holy rituals, evil. The evil. That's what we were indoctrinated with. So treaty making, nobody spoke the language, nobody spoke English. It was all done in our tribal languages. And everything was affirmed in that ceremony for it to be for us to have in the best interest of us. This is how we talked about in the last 4 days at Fort Carlton. 150 years of commemorating 150 years of treaty making, and the holy bundle that was there, the spirit that's in that bundle, translated the terms of Treaty 6. It wasn't done by human to human. Our ancestors, the Musumpa that were there, Palmaker and Yellow Mud Blanket, yellow mud blanket niya when dance ka tayo Japan. They were there. And they were in the forefront. They were asked to be in the forefront. Tom Maker was assigned as the spokesperson for the river people. Because the other chiefs didn't have confidence in themselves. So he was a key person. His brother Yellow Mud Blanket was a natural, just like your warriors. Natural born gifted warrior. Those talents. He was the Mullah sergeant at arms there, along with the Iron Confederacy tribal fighters. But each time after they listened to the elders, they went into ceremony. And the grandfathers would respond to them. How? Put it in these use this terminology on them, and they will agree. Say it this way, and they will agree. When the end came along, he said, you just cannot sign or touch the feather. You can't touch the feather for your mark to be made. He says, first of all, your ceremony has to take place. And then that's when the pipe stem was brought in. To take the oath, the highest level of oath, ladies and gentlemen. And today we understand it. The crown in right of Great Britain and the treaty nations endorsed an instrument called treaty. And that international legal instrument to affirm a continuance of our sovereignty over our lands. Lawmaking, governance to continue, want to be modified, but to continue in its original state. The Dominion of Canada would have to respect that. That's the way it was made. Abistigimas is to honor that. But before that, they saw that when they received it, when Alexander Morris reported to them, they freaked out because it was too strong. It was going to supersede them. So, but they were already in the developing stages of the Indian Act, so they speeded it up and endorsed it. Same year, 1876. Instead of doing things and honoring inherent right to governance, Indian Act was there implemented to destroy and eliminate the indigenous population of Canada. 1850, we were 25 million people, according to statistics and the research that's done. Today, as we speak, 6 million indigenous peoples. They say that 3,200,000 are us. 3 is 1 to 11. And we still own 58% of Canada, as it was left by our ancestors for our survival. Kupimatsia. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot has taken place, and my good friend, National Chief here, was National Chief back in '96. And we participated independently on the Charlottetown. I was asked to be the spokesperson. And then what's that guy's name again? Chrétien, the minister had a mouth like this. Well, I better not do that. He introduced that the Constitution, 1982 Constitution Act, would have peripheral authority over Canada. And all the people, including Indigenous peoples, would be circumscribed into Confederation. And that's the reason why Treaty 6 pulled out. That's the reasons why we worked with other areas again, so they agreed. He remembers. They agreed. So this has been a long, slow process in Dodemtic. I fully agree with Ovid. To make a long story short, let's get to today. Being represented by corporate entities hasn't gotten us everywhere. Look at the situation at home. I live it. After living 40 years in a moldy house that was written off, finally this year we're granted a new house. Finally, after 40 years. The complaints about treaty right to health is no longer recognized. My good friend Ron Lehman got his leg amputated. How many months did he take? A year and a half to get the proper leg, bionic leg on. Our children, the kind of medical attention that they require, we're starting to suffer greatly in Dodemtic. So we started a movement. Again, we'd like to consider the idea, is it possible, last year at Sutina, chiefs complaining about what government is doing and what not getting represented accordingly. Some say that these corporate entities are co-facilitating our demise. Kaya ano yung timaksya na mag-ibog. Look at the situation in urban areas. That wasn't supposed to be that way. So we want to change that. And the way we want to change it is by treaty area. Implement a sovereign house, government house. Indian government house at the agency level. Separate the two. Pull ourselves out of the corporate system and reaffirm the tribal governance order, inherent based. Mitigate, negotiate from there for let's wait for the hours. Nobody will deny it. And we're working with industry, implementing the concept of first right. Kaya ano is kitaskino? The major developments that's happening, the major projects that are being introduced, all the rare earths that are surfacing finally. But where are they? All within Treaties 1 to 11 territory, which are ours. But we need an office that will represent that concept of sharing the land, benefiting equally from the land. let the governments, corporations, and the world governments hear that from our perspective. Reconciliation action, they call some say it. I like that term. Reconciliation action. This is the new fight, the new world, a new way of fighting for us to do empty. And are we going to win? Yes, we are going to win. My generation and the younger parents and leadership today, some of them, they don't have the proper education. But our children does. There's no shortage of capacity, human resources, ladies and gentlemen. Look who's doing the work today. Just imagine once they make that transition to the inherent right-based work, how strong it's going to be for the next generation, following generation. Majority of them have reconciled, knowing relearning their language, spirituality, their culture, and functioning and contributing to society adequately. Transparent, accountable, because they work with society that has to be that way. That can be reintroduced by them, by our children, ladies and gentlemen, to make a better future. And I stand for that, I promote that, I advocate that. We had a wonderful visit by the Governor General of Canada. And the elders and the leadership that were there, some of them went to see the king, went to visit him, had a good visit with the king. A recommendation was made. Chief Ananas, Eric, he says, when you talk to the Governor General tomorrow, include these. And one of them is an annual visit from Treaties 1 to 11. 11 chiefs